Hi, this is continuing on with the series of videos about standard algorithms and setting up a module library of handlers to carry them out. What I have so far is a standard algorithm to get data into an array, and then I have a handler to display the data from an array. And just before we look at countercurrencies, you may be wondering why this one has an @ sign on data list and this one doesn't. You could use an @ sign, and quite a lot of people think you should with an array, but just to explain what happens if you don't use an @ sign, on the Word document before I showed you that if you use an @ sign, then data list will refer to or name the same array as ages. If you don't use an @ sign, then what happens is when you pass over ages to data list is given a copy of ages, so that anything you do on data list will be done using those numbers. So unless you want to actually change the numbers and see those numbers outside the handler, then you can do this, and in some ways it makes the data secure because you're not actually changing or performing operations on the original data. But the argument is that if you have a very large array, then because you're duplicating memory, it would make more sense if you actually just used the @ sign and named the same set of locations. So going back to the live code program, that's the display data, so I'm going to put in some, to separate out these handlers, and I'm going to write a countercurrencies handler. So I'm going to say on countercurrencies, and I want to pass in again how many elements there are in the array, and I need to pass over the array as well. And I'm not going to be changing the array, I'm just going to use the data in the array to count up how many occurrences there are of a certain event. And in this particular case, I'm going to count up how many people are over 18. So I'm not going to use the @ sign, I'm just going to pass over my ages array. I'll make a copy that's called data list, and then I'm going to start my countercurrencies. So I'll need to count through the list, so I'll need my index, and I will need a variable called total or something like that that will allow me to do the counting of the occurrences. So the first thing I'm going to do is put 0 into total, and then I need to look through all the elements of the array. So that's a fixed loop. Because I need to look at all of them, so I know that I'm doing exactly n times around the loop. And I'm going to find out if my array, which I'm calling data list within this handler, at index is more than 18, then I want to add 1 to total. Now you could write add 1 to total in live code, but I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. I'm going to put total plus 1 into total, and I'll just finish that if statement, and the only thing I've got left to do is to put my total into this field, which I called over 18. So I've got various programming constructs here. I've got my fixed loop, which is a very commonly used construct, and I have an if statement, which is quite often called a selection statement or a conditional statement. So I have two very common programming constructs here, and also I've got two variables local to this, total and index, and then I've got my parameters that I need from other handlers, the number of elements, and my data list, my array. So let's just see if that works. I'm going to get my data. Excuse me. So 61, 22. I should put some under 18, so I'll do 11, 14, and 19. So I should have 3 elements. So I'll display that data. So you'll notice I've got the new data. And then I'm going to say how many over 18. And the reason why this hasn't actually done anything is because I haven't actually called the handler. So what I'll need to do is to go onto this button here, and I'll need to call CounterCurrency. So I'm just going to go back to my module library and actually just copy that in, which is quite a good practice because you have to keep the parameter list in the same order when you call it. So let's put that in there, occurrences. And again, I'm going to pass over 5, and I want to find out how many people in my ages array. And just to revisit the module library, so 5 is going to come in as my value for n, and ages is going to be copied and called data list. And as I say, I could put the @ sign in, it would do the same job. I am duplicating the data, so perhaps this isn't a very efficient way of doing it, but let's see if it works. So get the data, let's do 19, 18, and then 21 and 24. So I should have 3 that are over 18. Let's display it. I get the new values. How many over 18? 0. So we need to find out why we're not getting the right number. Let's go back to this button, and you've probably spotted this. Again, we're using an array that was collected in a different button, and so I need to put global up here so that they're all talking about the same array. So one more time, get the data. And I should have 3 values over 18. Let's display the data. How many over 18? And I have 3 values. So let's go back to our module library. Again, I have a completely closed piece of code here. Any local variables I make local when they're just being used by this particular handler. And n and data list are being passed in. And I can now use this for any number of elements, just pass it in as n, and any array, just pass it across to data list and it will perform that. The only problem is that it only looks for ages that are over 18. So what we could do is we could put this in as a parameter, and then we can at least make this slightly more flexible. So I'm going to change this so that it's over a certain limit, and I'm going to pass that limit in like that, and I have to say to myself, is it being changed in a way that I will need to see the changes outside the handler? And the answer is no, it's just being used to find my countercurrencies. So I can leave it without the @ sign, and I'm going to go back to where I call it. And I now need to say 5 ages, and if I want the ones over 18, I'm going to put the ages 18 across, and maybe just to be tidy, I'm going to change that, just put the word limit in for now. So let's see if that works. Get the data, and I'll put in 13, 45, 23, that's 2 of them, and so I think I should have 2. Let's display the data, and 2 of them are over 18. But if I show you how flexible this is now, I can change this limit. I can now find out how many are over 25. And without having to rewrite all the code, I can just call the handler, and this time I'm passing 25 across to my limit. So let's run it again, get the data. Let's put, I'll just do one element that's over 25. Let's display the data. How many over the limit of 25? And I just get 1. So do you see the module library is starting to become really quite useful in that this is becoming more and more general. Well, should have changed that to over limit. So that's a basic countercurrencies, and the next video I'm going to do finding a maximum value.